Welcome to the Wind Up with Will, everyone. I'm your host, Will, and this video is going to be a little shorter today. Just touch on a few things. Sorry I haven't uploaded in like a couple weeks, but I want to start out by saying Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. A little late on the Merry Christmas. Today is the New Year, though. I've just got a few things I want to touch on today, discussing MLB, NFL, and the college football playoffs tonight. So let's start with Major League Baseball. Since my last video, the Dodgers have struck again in free agency. They've signed Yoshinobu Yamamoto. I hope I pronounced his first name correctly. The Los Angeles Dodgers signed him for a 12-year deal worth $325 million. They're also on the hook for Shohei Ohtani of the $700 million deal. They're deferring $680 million of that till after he's done playing. So it'll be my lighting's messing up here. Be the largest deferral of money in baseball history, and it'll go into effect 2035, I believe, which is 1 year after the Mets are off the hook. Or no, it'll actually start the year before. So it'll start right around the time that. Sorry, my lighting's messing up here. It'll start right around the time his deferral money, when Bobby Bonilla's money for the Mets ends. So I've seen some people say it's going to be a peaceful transition of the deferred money king from Bobby Bonilla to Shohei Ohtani. Forgot to mention that in the last video I did, where he's overtaking. What makes me feel better as a Mets fan that Bobby Bonilla, we won't be laughed as much about Bobby Bonilla when the Dodgers are paying $680 million to a player that no longer plays for them. Makes me feel better. However, as a Mets fan, I am upset that we didn't get Ohtani or Yamamoto. I didn't think we were going to get Ohtani. I really thought he was going to go to the Dodgers. But Yamamoto, I really thought the Mets had a chance to get him. Already have another Japanese pitcher in Kodai Senga. So I thought the Mets might have a chance to get Yamamoto and have two-star pitchers from Team Japan in the World Baseball Classic. But that won't be. The Dodgers, though, are really looking like they're going to be the favorites to win the World Series. I'm sorry, I'm not holding my mic, am I? They look like they're going to be the favorites to win the World Series this year, and they're also public enemy number one. I really hope everyone could hear the beginning of the video. If not, I'm going to have to re-record this. But the Dodgers are now public enemy number one in baseball, so everyone's going to hate them. Moving on from baseball, well, actually, I should probably mention. I think I mentioned that in the last. I don't remember if I mentioned in the last video that Ronald Acuna Jr. won the MVP in the National League, and Shohei Ohtani won the MVP in the American League. Might do a video here soon breaking down the winners of everything in MLB this past season, as well as all MLB team, and talking about the Pro Baseball Hall of the National Baseball Hall of Fame, and who's on the ballot this year, first timers, who has a chance to get in, and who I would maybe put in. Hopefully I can do a video on that soon. I really hope the beginning of this video recorded, like in my audio. If not, I'm going to be a little disappointed there. But now I'm going to move on to the NFL. So the NFL this weekend, the Philadelphia Eagles were upset by the Arizona Cardinals, who have beaten the Cowboys and the Eagles now, 2 of their 4 wins against 2 of the better teams. But because of them beating the Eagles and the Cowboys' somewhat controversial win over the Lions Saturday night, the Cowboys are now tied with the Eagles in record and have a better conference record, so they hold the tiebreaker and are now the NFC East leaders. And if both teams win next week, the Cowboys will win the NFC East, ensuring that there's a different NFC East winner every year for the last 20 years, as it continues to be. I said this at the beginning of the year. That's why I thought the Cowboys would win the division, just simply because of that, and really nothing else, of just that there has not been a repeat winner in 20 years in that division. So looking like I might get that right if the Cowboys can just hold on next week against Washington. The Eagles, though, continue to slide. They've lost, I believe, 4 or 5. Yeah, they've lost 4 of their last 5. So they were 10-1, and now they are 11-5. They've struggled here recently. They've lost some close games. They won a lot of close games earlier in the year, but it seems to be catching up with them now. But the Cowboys, if they can hold this, will be the 2 seed in the NFC, and they really need that. They're a much better team at home than on the road. They average close to 40 points a game at home. They went undefeated at home this year, 8-0. Cowboys are going to be a really dangerous team to play in the playoffs at Dallas, and they want to be in home as long as possible. Obviously, they'd love to have the 1 seed, but the 49ers locked that up over the weekend with their win over Washington, 27-10. Now, the Cowboys had a controversial win Saturday night over the Lions, 20-19. The Cowboys scored, I believe, late in the game. Yeah, with just under 2 minutes to go, Brandon Aubrey hit a 43-yard field goal to extend the Cowboys' lead from 17-13 to 20-13, making it a 7-point game. Now, there's a little controversy in that drive as well. The Cowboys got it to 2nd and long and decided to throw the ball instead of run possibly another 40 seconds, close to 40 seconds off the clock. But instead, they decide to throw it. It's incomplete. The next play, I believe, is a run play, and then they kick the field goal. But it left the Lions with 1:40 left, down 7, when they could have got the ball back with about a minute left, no timeouts, down 7. Because they scored their touchdown. Lions scored a touchdown with 20 seconds left. I don't think they would have had the time had the Cowboys just managed the clock better. Mike McCarthy just continues to show that he cannot manage the clock at all, which is unfortunate for the Cowboys. That's really been their downfall the last few years, is mismanaging the clock in a lot of key situations. But the Lions scored a touchdown by Amon-Ra St. Brown with 23 seconds to go, and the announcers were talking about it the entire time, that will the Lions go for 2? And they're a team that plays risks a little, going for it on 4th down, going for 2-point conversions. Dan Campbell decided to roll the dice and go for it. Now, he rolled the dice earlier in the game, a couple 4th downs where they had chances to kick field goals, and they decided to try and run play, and it didn't work out for them. So that hurt the Lions. So we had 2 coaches that made bad decisions in this game, Mike McCarthy and Dan Campbell, even though I think Campbell is probably a little better coach. Bad decisions by both of them in this game. Dan Campbell decided to go for that 2-point conversion, and the first attempt, they got it. But the controversy is over their offensive lineman that came in, Decker. The referee said he didn't report. So when they scored, me, a Cowboys fan, I was very upset. But they scored the 2-point conversion, but then there was a flag saying that he did not report as eligible, and so therefore it didn't count. It was a 5-yard penalty on that for not reporting. So the Lions are backed up, and instead of kicking the extra point then to tie it, they go for 2 again, which I think is a horrible decision by Dan Campbell, because you're farther back, and you're like, his attitude is literally just, screw it, we're going for the win. I would be so mad if I was a Lions fan that you just kick the extra point and force overtime. Like, that's what you do. And instead, Micah Parsons then jumps offside on a play where it's picked. So it's a 5-yard penalty on the Cowboys. So we're back to square one. So the Lions go for 2, guess what, again. And they get a little pressure on Goff, and he throws a pass a little just outside the reach, a little hard for his receiver to make the catch. Falls down, incomplete. They fail. Cowboys win. They attempt an onside kick. Cowboys recover it. CeeDee Lamb had an amazing game, 200 yards. And reports coming out, I believe it was yesterday, and I've seen them today as well, that officiating crew has had quite a few missed calls and bad calls throughout the year. And even then, like, if you look at the footage, the guy clearly goes to report that he's in the game as eligible. The referee just either didn't acknowledge him, or didn't understand what was going on. I don't know, but this is clearly on the referees, it seems. But as they pointed out on the broadcast as well, it's partly on the player too to make sure that the referee understands that you're telling him. Because if you look at look at the footage, he just kind of walks up to the referee, and the referee walks away. So I don't think the referee understood what the player was trying to do. Players got to be a little forceful. Hey, I'm in the game is eligible. I'm in the game is eligible. I'm reporting is eligible. So it's partly both ways, but obviously the officiating crew has had a lot of issues this year, and the NFL reporting, I believe it was either yesterday or it might have been today, is saying that crew has been downgraded and they will not be doing any playoff games, which is good because they've had some bad calls throughout the year. But because of that decision that helps my Cowboys win, they're probably going to win the division if they can just beat Washington, which I think they likely will, and have the 2 seed in the NFC, meaning they've got a good chance to make it to an NFC title game for the first time since 1995, and probably be facing the 49ers again, who they've lost 3 times in a row to, or the last 3 years in a row, really. Twice in the playoffs, and then this year in the regular season. So it'll be a nice revenge game to get to face them again and hopefully beat them. The Ravens yesterday destroyed the Dolphins and locked up the 1 seed in the AFC. And they played the 49ers not this week, but last week. And they beat the 49ers last week. And that was perhaps a Super Bowl preview because those appear to be the 2 best teams in each conference. Now, the Dolphins are early in the year looked like they were going to kind of run away with the division, but after the loss yesterday, they're just 1 game ahead of Buffalo, which Buffalo has an interesting situation where they can, if they win, I believe they play Miami the last game. Yeah, they play Miami. If they win the last game, they win the division. If they beat the Dolphins earlier in the year, they'll win again. They'll be tied. They'll hold the head-to-head. They will win the AFC East, but right now the Bills are in the 6th seed. But if they lose, and Pittsburgh or there's going to be a winner out of Indianapolis, Houston. I think it's if Houston wins, and I know if Pittsburgh wins. If 2 teams behind them win, Buffalo can miss the playoffs. So if they lose, and sorry, I'm just looking at the standings over here. If Buffalo loses and the Steelers win, and there's going to be a winner between the Colts and the Texans, the Bills are out of the playoffs. I think it's the Texans. I don't know if both teams. I don't think the Bills played the Colts this year. I'm going to look real quick. It might be either team because one of those teams is going to win because Indianapolis and Houston play each other the last game of the year. If Pittsburgh wins and there's going to be a winner out, more than likely there won't be a tie. Out of Houston and Indianapolis, and Buffalo loses, Buffalo's out of the playoffs. And who would have thought that earlier this year? Kansas City slipped. This is going to be the first time probably ever. Well, it will be the first time ever that Patrick Mahomes does not have home field advantage through the playoffs. They're going to have it in the first round with more than likely the 3 seed unless Miami loses. Well, actually, no. If Buffalo were to win, then Buffalo would be the 2 seed. So Buffalo could get up to the 2 seed and be ahead of Kansas City. So Kansas City's really locked into the 3 seed there. Jacksonville needs to beat the Titans last game of the year to ensure they win the division because the Colts and Texans play each other. There's going to be a winner of that game. All 3 of those teams are tied in record. So we've got an exciting finish, and Joe Flacco's tearing it up for the Browns. I think he's probably the favorite to win Comeback Player of the Year. Damar Hamlin also has been mentioned, just coming back from how serious the guy died on the field, and now he's coming back playing in the league. So the great story there. Great story from Flacco, like being on his couch and leading the Browns into the playoffs, while previously playing for their arch rival, the Ravens. In the NFC, as I mentioned before, the Cowboys and Eagles playing 2 different games next week, but that has implications for their division. The 49ers and Lions have those divisions wrapped up. Buccaneers and Saints and the Falcons are all competing out for the NFC South. The Falcons are 7-9 and can still win their division. Minnesota is 7-9 and is still alive in the playoffs. I believe they have to have a lot of help in front of them because they've got New Orleans, Seattle, and Green Bay all ahead of them in record. You got the Rams, who locked up a wild card spot at 9-7. They'll be the second wild card. So really, we've got the NFC South and the 7th seed up for grabs in the NFC. The AFC, we've got the AFC South division and then a couple wild card spots up for grabs. Now, I want to also mention briefly the MVP race in the NFL. There's a lot of people, been a lot of flipping around on who it's going to be, whether it's Tyreek Hill, Tua Tagovailoa, Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott, Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey. There's a lot of players' names being thrown around, and it seems like kind of a wide open, maybe not quite a wide open race, but more candidates than in previous years, where in previous years it just seems like it's kind of between 1 or 2, maybe 3 guys. But there's a lot of candidates this year. I don't think Tyreek's going to win it now. He's not going to break the single season receiving record unless he has like 300 yards next week, which I don't think he will. CeeDee Lamb has more receiving yards now than Tyreek. I don't think Tyreek is going to win the MVP. He's fallen off partly due to his ankle injury that's kind of held him back and not been able to perform maybe at his highest level the last few weeks, but still great year. He might be in the race still for Offensive Player of the Year, but he's not going to win the MVP. Dak Prescott, a lot of people love him. He has great stats on the year, but having watched the Cowboys every week, he's putting a lot of those numbers up against bad teams. And when the Cowboys play capable teams like the Lions or the Bills, he doesn't put up the big flashy numbers as much. So I don't think you can give it to him when most of those stats come from playing against far weaker teams. When they play big games against the 49ers or the Eagles the first time, the Eagles the first time he did play well, except for like the last 2 minutes of the game. But there's been several games this year where he's just not played the same, where it's obviously they're playing a better team. So I don't think you can give it to him. Brock Purdy has the argument of having similar numbers to Dak, and he was, before they played the Ravens, I think he was first in pretty much every offensive stat, or passing stat. I think he's second in yards now to Tua, but he was there. He was first in completion percentage, quarterback rating, touchdown passes. I think there was another 1 or 2 he was in front in. So Brock Purdy has an argument, but he has all of these weapons around him: Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, and he's got a great defense, as well as a good head coach. And they've got the 1 seed, so he does have the argument that he led his team to the 1 seed. And they're obviously a better team with him than without him, beating the Eagles this year, where they lost to the Eagles in the NFC title game last year when he was hurt or got hurt in that game. So there's an argument for him there, but as I said, he's got all these weapons around him. Dak has weapons around him as well. So I don't know if you can put either of those 2 guys as MVP, in my opinion. Lamar has kind of come out as the front runner now just because he's led his team to the 1 seed in the AFC. They've beaten 49ers and the Dolphins in back-to-back weeks, 2 of the better teams in the league. So he has that argument going for him, but other player stats are better, like Dak and Brock Purdy. So there's an argument there. I don't think you can give it to Mahomes, who's not had as good a year this year, which isn't entirely his fault. His receivers have butterfingers. Josh Allen, I think you could make an argument for him, but because of the Bills' woes through the year and the fact he's turned the ball over a bunch, I don't know if you can give it to him, even though he has a ton of rushing touchdowns. I think he has like 13 rushing touchdowns on the year. But I don't think he's going to win it, and no one's really mentioning his name. But there's a guy who I think should win it. I don't think he will, just because of the way the NFL is now, but I think he should. It's Christian McCaffrey. He's got like 21 total touchdowns on the year. He's got like 18 rushing and 3 receiving. He's got a ton of receiving yards, ton of rushing yards. He's leading the league in rushing. And since going to the 49ers last year, they've been a totally dominant team. I think he's deserving of the MVP. He is their most valuable player. He's a huge part of their offense. He makes that team click. I think it's him. I think he should be the MVP. Now, I don't think he's going to get it. I think they'll probably give it to Lamar. But those are just my quick thoughts on that. Lamar is the favorite, though. It seems to be a lot of people talking about him as the favorite. But I also wanted to mention today in the college football playoffs, we had some bowl games earlier today. This is my last section. I'll briefly touch again on what I started the video with in case the audio cut out on that, or the audio didn't pick it up. But earlier today we had the RealiQuest Bowl. LSU beat Wisconsin 35-31. And then we had the Verbo Fiesta Bowl. Oregon beat Liberty 45-6. I don't think that was a very even game. And then you had the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl, Tennessee beating Iowa 35-0. Iowa really needs to find an offense. They're just a defensive team who likes to punt. Those are the 3 games earlier today. Coming on at 4 o'clock, so in about 30 minutes, we've got Michigan and Alabama. Michigan is a 2.5-point favorite. They're the 1 seed. Alabama's the 4 seed. And then you've got Texas and Washington tonight at 7:45. Both those games are on ESPN. Texas is the favorite by 4 points over Washington. Texas is the 3 seed. Washington is the 2 seed. So briefly, my thoughts on that. I think Texas is going to win in a very close game. I'm going to say, and Jim Harbaugh mentioned the other day that Alabama and Michigan might be the game of the century. I'm gonna take a step farther and say that Texas-Washington might be a better game than Alabama-Michigan. They don't have the prestigious pedigree of those 2 other schools. I know Texas does, but Washington, I know they've won a title before, a title or 2 before, but it might not be the sexy kind of names as Alabama and Michigan. But Texas and Washington are 2 really good teams out west, but because they're not the Big Ten or the SEC, you might not hear about them as much. But they're 2 really good teams. Texas beat Alabama by 10 points at Alabama. So Texas is a better team than Alabama. Washington has gone undefeated this year. They're 13-0. They beat Oregon twice, who is a really good team as well. So I'm going to say that Texas wins by the skin of their teeth in this game over Washington, 31-30. Close game, but Texas is going to pull it out. In the Alabama-Michigan game, as Jim Harbaugh called it, the game of the century, I think Michigan will win 27-24 in that game. I think they're the better team. This Alabama team's not the same Alabama team it once was. I know a lot of people are saying they're going to go take care of business as usual and beat Michigan, that they beat Georgia. There's a few things. This Georgia team this year was not the same Georgia team as previous years. They've lost, I think, like 30 players in like the last 3 years to the NFL. So they're not the same Georgia team. This Alabama team's not the same Alabama team. They barely beat South Florida. They beat them 17-3 early in the year. Like, that is not what Alabama should put up against South Florida. They barely got by Arkansas. I think they beat them 27-24. They barely beat, and Arkansas is not a good team. I don't care whether they're in the SEC or not. They're not a good team. They went like 4-8 this year. That's not a good team. I know a win's a win, but we're talking about pedigrees and your season, your resume. It's not a good. That's not a sexy win. That's getting by the skin of your teeth in that game. They struggled against Auburn and should have lost to Auburn, if not by a miracle. And they lost by 10 at home to Texas. This is not your daddy's or granddaddy's Alabama team. This is This is a slightly weaker Alabama team. Still, they're a great team. I'm sure they're going to put up a show tonight. They're gonna try and prove me wrong and a bunch of other people wrong, and they're gonna give Michigan a game. They're a good team still. I'm not saying they're a bad team. It's just they're not a normal Alabama team. They're not the dominant Alabama teams of past. Now they're still a good team. Michigan's got their work cut out for them, but Alabama's got their work cut out for them as well, playing Michigan, who deservingly is number one. But I think it's going to be Michigan and Texas win and facing each other in the college football title game next Monday. And I'm going to pick Michigan to win that game over Texas. But we'll see if that ends up being a game. I'll say if Michigan and Texas are in the final, Michigan wins 31-28 in that game. But those are just my thoughts. If you got some disagreements on those, let me know in the comments down below. Briefly want to touch on it again just because the audio might not have picked it up in the beginning of this. We're going to go to MLB, just briefly mention them again. Yoshinobu Yamamoto joined the Dodgers on a 12-year, $325 million deal, breaking me, a Mets fan's heart, going to the Dodgers, making them public enemy number one, but also the heavy favorites to win the World Series this year. They got Shohei Ohtani in the offseason, or that's still the offseason. They got him for a 10-year, $700 million deal. They've deferred $680 million of that till after he's done playing. So he will be the largest amount of deferred money in MLB history, far surpassing Bobby Bonilla and the Mets. Also, it softens my heart a little bit to know that we won't be made as much fun of for Bobby Bonilla when the Dodgers are going to be paying Shohei $680 million when he's not even playing for them anymore. So it'll make me feel better on that part. But they are going to be the favorites for the World Series. That's all I got for this video. It went on a little farther than I thought it was going to, but that's all I've got. Let me know your comments down below, what you think of the Dodgers getting Shohei and Yamamoto. Who's the favorite to win the World Series this coming year? Who's going to win the college football playoffs tonight and go to the final? Who's going to win the final? What are your thoughts on the NFL playoff scenarios? Who's getting in? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you in the next video. Adios.